Hello friends, and welcome to another video. And here I'm just going to talk briefly about creatine and protein powders, because seemingly you can't have a health and fitness video without having a video on creatine and protein powders. And there's so many different ones out there now. It seems that I can certainly kind of hypothesize that for anyone who's kind of just starting to think about maybe getting into health and fitness, it can all seem a bit kind of overwhelming, kind of with all the different types of ones there are. And people maybe be kind of wondering, is it really that important that I take it? And if I do use these products, which ones do I use? Is some better than others, and all of that? So hopefully I can kind of just get to a kind of crux of all that. So first of all, let's look at creatine, and let's kind of basically then lay out what creatine is. So creatine is basically just a naturally occurring compound. It's technically an amino acid, and it is naturally produced by your body. It is also found in foods as well, such as red meat and fish. It's basically just kind of gets most concentrated into the muscles. It pours water into the muscles, and therefore it is kind of responsible for having short bursts of physical health and physical effectiveness, especially in intense weight training and stuff like that, which is kind of why it's become a staple mark in health and fitness. Another reason why it's kind of become kind of a bit of a staple mark is because of just how long it's been around. It's where health and fitness has really kind of taken off lately, and so there's all sorts of different products and supplements coming at you thick and fast, and we're kind of we're just so people just start taking it, and we're not really kind of sure what's kind of gone into it or how it's been kind of regulated. So 10 years time we could just go, oh my god, now we're turned into a hyena or something. But whereas creatine is a very tried and tested thing. So I think that's why also people similar to protein powder, which we'll get into in a second. So I think that's kind of why people kind of also gravitate towards it. So yeah, absolutely of benefit. I don't think that it matters kind of who matters really too much, who what type you take. I also don't think it's really too important in when you take it either. I probably wouldn't recommend taking it on an empty stomach, but yeah, I wouldn't really I mean, some people kind of prefer to take it before the exercise. So, but the evidence between kind of when you consume something like this and how quickly it takes to manifest itself into your workout is kind of sketchy, because there is some evidence to suggest that time elapse isn't a matter of hours or minutes, it's a matter of days. So I don't think it matters too much, in kind of when you take it. As for a type, if you really don't know what type to go for, the default position is just a monohydrate. That being said, I mean, I do feel like creatine is slightly maybe overstated as well. And I do feel because what it tends to be is when you kind of take creatine, and you don't need that much, you only take usually if you buy a bite of it's quite cheap as well. It's usually about £7-8, something like that. It's quite cheap, and you tend to get maybe about 30 servings out of that. So that could hypothetically last you a month type thing. So so it's not bad, but yeah, it's you only really need like one little scoop of that. And people have been talking like you need more, you need 20 grams, and that's just ridiculous. Like 5 is enough. So it's not really. So it's basically. So yeah, that's kind of like all it is. But like I said, as beneficial as creatine is, I do think it's slightly overstated as well. Because what I think happens is, like, at least in my experience, is like when you take it, how it will kind of like manifest itself into your workout long term is you will find yourself being able to do maybe 2 or 3 more reps than you would have maybe otherwise. And that's kind of it. So, while it's a benefit, I wouldn't kind of be, I do think that people overstate it in the sense of trying to make out like it's some sort of like holy grail of health and fitness. And if you don't take creatine, then all your workouts are just kind of like in vain if you don't take it. That is just not something that I subscribe to. Do you know what I mean? If you work out and you get into a regular routine with that, then obviously you are going to make gains and you are going to see benefits there, regardless of whether you take creatine or not. So, it's so while I think that, it is absolutely beneficial, I wouldn't sort of kind of condemn anyone who did it. If somebody told me that they were going to the gym and they weren't taking creatine, I wouldn't be like, what, you are not taking creatine? Do you know what I mean? I just, I think it can offer like a boost, but I do think that the boost is kind of a little bit overstated sometimes. So yeah, and similar to kind of like protein powder. I mean, protein powder. So basically, in contrast to so it's important to remember that protein powder and creatine do different things. Okay, so as I said, creatine kind of like enhances that workout and that training. Protein is more important for your muscle recovery. So therefore, I tend to take protein powder after a workout. And again, it's sort of absolutely. And if you are doing like a lot of weight training intensity, yeah, it like having quite a high protein diet is important. It's important because protein plays a significant role in muscle recovery and preserving your muscle as well. So yeah, protein powders can be really beneficial in that. But again, you would kind of say that how essential they are is kind of like really depending on how much protein there is in your diet. You know what I mean? If you are like a big meat eater sort of thing, they're not maybe going to be maybe as significant as maybe they are if you're going to be on a plant-based diet. And I don't mean that disparagingly to any vegetarians or vegans out there, because there is studies out there to say that that people on the plant-based diet can absolutely go toe to toe with meat eaters, at least in the short term when it comes to training, as long as they're still getting the same protein amount. So I don't mean that disparagingly to people on the plant-based diet, but all I mean is that what you tend to find, generally speaking, is when you have plant-based alternatives for protein, what you can tend to find is that protein content is lower than it would be in maybe a meat product. So for example, if you took like a corn product, for example, they would be they would be obviously a source of protein for people being vegetarian. And while that would be a source of protein for them, it wouldn't have the same amount of a corn fillet wouldn't have the same amount of protein as if somebody had a chicken fillet. So basically, the person on the plant-based diet, or the person consuming the corn, would then obviously have to kind of consume more of it to kind of equate to the protein intake of somebody having the chicken. So, like I said, and I feel like obviously as long as a person on a plant-based diet is doing that, it's kind of like doing that and sort of like matching the protein intake of a meat eater. Various studies out there to suggest, they can absolutely kind of like hold their own. So yeah, like I said, I don't mean that disparaging into like plant-based diet, but like I said, I just feel like obviously it's, sometimes for plant-based diets do require more protein, do need to consume more in order to kind of equate that protein intake sometimes. So protein powders can obviously be a big aid to that, you know what I mean? Because you can have because obviously you can have your protein powders in kind of like anything. I mean, people always talk about having a milk and water, and that's absolutely fine. I prefer to have it in milk. I do think that it depends sometimes on a little bit on kind of like what your goals are, sort of thing. So for example, if you are working out to look at like weight loss, for example, then you would kind of like maybe favor having your protein powder with water, or if you were going to have milk, maybe be a bit mindful obviously of what milk you're using. Obviously choose like a low fat milk. So yeah, I mean, because so that's basically kind of it. But then you can have creatine and protein and pretty much everything. Sometimes people put the creatine and protein powder in one big shake. Some people put creatine or protein powder in their coffee, and stuff like that. So it just kind of like depends. I mean, but yeah, it's so yeah, like in summary, they are both kind of that they are both really beneficial products to have. I think in if you are looking to get into health and fitness, they are. But like I said, creatine, yeah, important, somewhat overstated, but I wouldn't I just wouldn't, if you're happy to kind of fork out that extra 7-8 quid a month, then do it. You know what I mean? If you're not, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't listen too much to all these people, maybe around you or you see online, who are kind of like just saying, well, if you don't take creatine, then it's a waste of time, because I just that's just not the case at all. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, protein powder again, can be really beneficial to help you hit those goals. But again, it depends. It depends on what your diet is, and how much protein you actually get. You know what I mean? That will kind of decide, how beneficial like a protein shake is or isn't, in your diet. So that pretty much like wraps it up. So thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section what your own thoughts are, and I will see you guys on the next video.